Getting it started. So, Connor Wilson, I know you through LAXNAi, but before that, I used to watch your YouTube videos restringing sticks for kids and teaching them how to throw. So, it's been a pleasure to meet you. When did your lacrosse career start? Or as far as like little kid, like when did you start playing?
Yeah, so there was no youth lacrosse in the town that I grew up in Weston, Massachusetts. Um, and so a kid who was in my class, Jake Dwyer, his dad Matt Dwyer, came up with the idea. He was a Garden City guy coming from Long Island. He came up with the idea of starting a youth lacrosse in town, and basically it was like, I mean, my brother was one of the youngest kids. He was in second grade. I was in fourth grade. There were kids who were like in sixth or seventh grade. We were just all out there together. Had like t-shirt jerseys, like a set of maroons and a set of grays. And we played on this kind of rinky-dink little grass field that was mostly used for soccer. And it was like a summer program. And so it's basically just like getting sticks into kids' hands and giving them a shot. And, all of us were playing soccer and Pop Warner football and hockey and baseball and, a million other sports. But yeah, it's like two or three nights a week, and just like getting kids introduced to the sport, which is really fun. It was a great way to kind of get involved. And, it was mostly like, I think every coach who was out there, with the exception of maybe one guy, was a dad. And so it just kind of grew from there. Eventually, we did start like an official youth lacrosse organization in the town for the spring. We actually ended up partnering with our rival town because they didn't have necessarily enough kids. Small town, just like us. I think they had like 600 kids in their high school at the time. We had 400, and so just kind of like partnered up with them and joined the Mass Bay Youth Lacrosse League. I think when I was in sixth grade. So like we played kind of two of these summer things, and then went ahead and started up like a spring program. And honestly, like I think it informed kind of how I have approached the sport, in that the rival high school coach was very supportive of our town joining their town and allowing kids to play lacrosse. And so then I remember even in high school, we're playing them in the heated rivalry game. And Tom Cavanaugh was still really supportive of us. And so my junior year, we finally got a varsity team, and we lost to them. They were pretty good. Had a couple of kids, like kid going off to Colgate and Gettysburg, and they were really solid. I think we lost like 12-8. We didn't have any seniors on the team. And then the next year, I remember we actually won my senior year. We beat our rivals, and they were a pretty established high school team. And I remember Coach Kavanaugh coming up to us with a huge smile on his face, having just lost a game to his rival high school, but he knew that he had been a part of us picking up sticks and getting involved in the game. And so that kind of stuck with me, I think, for the rest of my lacrosse years. Which are still going on today, but and probably why they're still going on today is that from the beginning I was part of a really kind of inclusive community who was focused on like local community based growth and involvement, so to see a guy like that who had gone to state playoffs and his team had been successful, to see him be excited, not that he lost a game, but that we had won a game against them. I think was really informative, and kind of like it seems like a different sport, from a lot of other sports, because it wasn't so parochial, it wasn't so divided that you couldn't be excited for somebody else seeing success. He was just excited that it was a really good game.
It was a really small community, and I mean, it still kind of continues to be, like you said. It's such a it's weird because like the intro to the sport, if you don't have somebody who knows how to set up a stick to throw and catch, it's kind of, you need somebody at least who has an idea. So yeah, no, it always has seemed a sport to me like, and it just didn't have that entrenched division travel. It's getting more that way now, honestly, in most
It
of the
is.
spots. But unfortunately, like when we were kids, I never saw a lacrosse stick until ninth grade. I was on the track team because I played hockey and I tried to stay in shape. And I seen a couple kids. They had just started a lacrosse team a couple years ago. I seen somebody run out, and I was like, that looks like way more fun than pole vaulting. I'm gonna do that. And
Yep.
yeah, but if you don't have anybody that even knows how to throw and catch, it is cool to see like the growth, or all of a sudden when kids start to learn with the stick. And yeah, I would say that is definitely something that separates lacrosse. Something I've never really thought about is how much in infancy it is if you're away from like Midwest New York, and Long Island seemed to have an entrenched area. And I mean, like you didn't have a high school team, and the high school where my kids go just got a team 2 years ago, so it's definitely not a big sport in most spots.
Yeah, and I mean, now if you look at the state of Massachusetts, there is like a ton of high school lacrosse. I think they've got 4 divisions. There's all these youth programs and club programs, and there's all this stuff going on. Like when I played as a kid growing up, like I played in like the first Mass Bay Youth Lacrosse League jamboree, and I think there were like 20 teams there, and that was everybody. I think there's a team from New Hampshire as well. You know what I mean? Like it was really small. Now when they do it out in Fort Devens in Massachusetts, I think, and it's like hundreds of teams out there. So it's a different animal than it was. But I think as you're trying to grow something, you can't play the game if you don't have people to play against. And so these smaller sports, and lacrosse still, in maybe a state like Kentucky, it's not huge yet, and so there's still that idea of like, let's help other people out. And to me, I mean, that when you look at like the long tail and the short tail of sports involvement, very few kids who play youth lacrosse go on to play varsity high school lacrosse. Very few kids who go and play high school varsity lacrosse end up playing high level college lacrosse. Very few kids who play high level college lacrosse go on and play pro. And so you have this shrinking of the pyramid at every level. And so what is your focus? Is your focus just those elite kids who are going on to the next level? Or is your focus on the 99.9% of kids who are never going to play college lacrosse? What are they learning? Right? Like, what are they learning by playing this sport? Is it just catching and throwing? Because if it is, to me, that's really not enough. And so I always think back to my youth lacrosse days, and to see a coach of a rival high school want us to succeed, not caring if we were going to go off and play college. That's not what it was about. It was about learning life lessons. It was about testing yourself and being in an opportunity where not only can you fail, but you are going to fail all the time, and being able to deal with that. And I mean, that's the most valuable thing in the world that sports can teach you, is that you are in a consequence-free environment. Winning and losing, like, sure, I mean, everybody wants to win, but at the end of the day, like, if you win a game or you lose a game, it doesn't have any real tangible effect on the quality of your life. And so learning how to deal with the loss, learning how to win with class, like these are important lessons that any kid will benefit from learning from any sport. Mine, primarily just happened to be lacrosse.
Yeah, I never won a lacrosse game till I went to college. Our team was trash. We
There
had
you
like
go.
two kids who knew how to throw and catch. And it was funny because I was on a high level hockey team and we won all the time, went to the top like championships, and it was a completely different animal. I remember when I went to college and Paul Necker was the first guy I knew that actually like knew something about lacrosse, and he started teaching me, and I was like, wow, this would have been helpful like 3 years ago when I started. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's like you said, losing yeah, just learning that it's not really about the number. It's more how you guys treated each other and how much effort everybody put in. Because you didn't want people out there giving up or just being like idiots and doing stupid physical things. Because sometimes things degrade into that. But no, that is a huge life lesson that I guess I never really picked up on I definitely learned to lose in lacrosse. We were awful. It was bad. Like we had kids that couldn't even throw and catch, so you'd throw the ball up to the attack man, and like by my senior year, we were getting close. We weren't getting shut out anymore. That was a huge like when we scored a goal, our whole team would go nuts. It was hilarious.
Well, and to me, that's like a big part of life, right? Like you might not be the best attorney in the world, but can you go out and can you win some of your cases? It can, and so that's true in everything. It's true with our social dynamics. It's true in our professional lives. You're not going to win every day. You're just not. Like that is the way life goes. And so learning how to deal with a loss and learning how to come back stronger and learn something from it, instead of going into a shell because things aren't going well for you, learning how to deal with that. I think that's really one of the big benefits from being involved in sports in your life, because it's going to teach you that resiliency. And again, you're learning that in a consequence-free environment. Like if you win or lose a youth lacrosse game, it does not matter. It just doesn't. It literally doesn't matter at all. And so I think we get really caught up. Like I've coached youth lacrosse and done some club stuff and been out at tournaments and seen parents on the sideline like going crazy. And it's like, this is like a B-level club tournament. Like, like whether your team finishes 3-1 or 2-2 or 1-2, like it doesn't really matter. Like, is your kid having fun? Are they having a good experience? Are they staying in shape? Are they making new friends? Are they learning life lessons? Like, that's what matters. But people get very caught up today, maybe more so than ever, in the wins and losses because they think that means something, maybe, or that's how you measure yourself. I don't think that's how you measure yourself, because you're going to lose. You're going to lose in life. It doesn't make you a loser. What makes you a loser is if you give up and if you stop. But if you keep going, it prepares you to maybe win tomorrow or in a month or a year from now or 10 years from now. Or if you're struggling in a relationship at home, are you just going to give up and be like, I'll just start a new family? Like that would be a crazy approach. No, you stick with it, and you're going to have some bad moments and you're going to have some good moments, and hopefully the good moments outweigh the bad and the journey is worth it. It's not just about the end destination, or your record. So, sports can be tough because there is a score. You do have a win and loss record at the end of the season, but that's not the end all be all of what we're doing out there.
I don't remember one team record from when I was a kid. Now that you say it, I don't remember one team record at all from when I was a kid. I tell my kids all the time, it's only a loss if you didn't learn something. Like if you go out there and lose anything, it doesn't matter if it's, school activities, whatever. If you just didn't learn anything or didn't put your effort in, that's really the only loss that you're going to have.
Yeah, I mean, and like for my high school team, like we qualified. There's only one state tournament back then. Now there are 4 divisions in Massachusetts, but back then there was one. And so we qualified my junior and senior year. Our two first years with a varsity team at my high school, we qualified for the state playoff. Like we had a 500 record. That was a huge win for us, right? And so it's like, can you come back tomorrow better than you were today? That's a win. And that's something that's gonna benefit you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and all the way up through. So I just did the press conference at the Firewolves, and that's literally what Glenn Clark was saying about the season. He's like, you got to remind these kids, like these young men, that it's an investment. Everything in life is an investment. You just keep, yes, it's a loss and it's terrible, but did you learn something? Can you put something away and build towards the future? So, yeah, I like that. That's a good. But so after you played in high school, did you play in college?
I did, yeah. I was lucky enough to go to Wesleyan University in Connecticut and play for the legendary John Reba. When I joined that team, like I think we were not a top level NESCAC team by any stretch of the imagination. We were usually down at the bottom. But for most of the years that I was there, we ended up being really competitive. Playing in final games for the conference, going to the ECACs. Playing against Middlebury when they were in the middle of their 3 national championship run. And so, yeah, we kind of elevated the program under Coach Reba. in its early years, and kind of set like a new standard not only for Wesleyan lacrosse but for Wesleyan athletics in general. And now you look at that athletic program, almost 20 plus years later, and they're not only have they won a national championship in men's lacrosse in 2018, but they've won in women's tennis, and soccer team is doing a lot better, and football had their first undefeated NESCAC championship season this last year. So like athletics in general have really taken a big step up in terms of quality of wins. But I think at the same time, the experience for a lot of the kids going to that school was not necessarily like, we need to win. It was, let's have a well-rounded college experience. Let's keep learning these important lessons that are going to serve us, well beyond our 4 years on the field.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the one thing, especially all these kids take their college acceptance, and the kids playing in these club teams, and somebody will get picked to go somewhere. And like, I don't know, I tell every kid that I actually know and kind of care about, I'm like, it really doesn't matter where you go. It's what are you going to do when you get there? Like, do you have a plan? Because you can go to, you go to Notre Dame, and if you don't do anything when you're there, or don't have a plan for like what you're trying to work on, you're not going to benefit yourself. So like, we have kids that are going to colleges that don't even have the major they're involved in, just because they're like, oh, I can go play lacrosse. And it's kind of funny when you see it, because sometimes it is such a big, it makes people pay attention, get good grades, and do those kind of things. But also they lose track sometimes when they're getting ready to go to college. They're like, oh, lacrosse is the most important thing. I honestly think these men's league tournaments, what that's doing to help people, as far as like, you have guys going back to play college at 21 years old, where guys are kind of following that Canadian hockey style, where kids will go out, figure out who they want to be for a few years. I think that gets lost sometimes, but I don't know, the biggest thing I think is all the Division One, like the big lacrosse schools in the U.S., they're all great schools. Like, you would be proud to have your kid go to any one of those, not because they played lacrosse there, just to say that you went to that college and got a degree. I think that's a huge advantage lacrosse has, where, yeah, sometimes I didn't even think about that till after, but kids that really just think, oh, I need to play lacrosse, versus, allowing lacrosse to open the door.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking at schools, I was very fortunate in that, my father was really involved and very helpful in terms of like I had never heard of Wesleyan before. My dad was like, hey, you should look at this school. Like, I think it might be a good fit for you. Like, he did a lot of research there. And again, like, his focus was not on finding me the best lacrosse school. That had nothing to do with it. It was finding me the best school for me that was going to help me continue to grow and learn and, become a leader, and like, all these things that are, going to benefit you for decades down the line. Like, that was the most important thing. It just so happened that there was a really good coach there, and we had some really good kids, and, my teammates were great. Like, but that was a change. If I just looked at them historically and just been basing it off lacrosse, maybe I wouldn't have looked at that school at all. But it was really about the school. And then the lacrosse was really secondary. I mean, I just went for a tour of the school in general, and then like dropped by the lacrosse coach's office. I didn't even know if I could play college lacrosse. I had no idea. Even like my first weeks there before we started up captain's practices in the fall, I was like, am I just going to get like run around? Or are these guys going to just like be so good? And I have no business playing lacrosse. I had no idea. I ended up like starting every game for 4 years, but I didn't know that going in,
That is quite the experience, isn't it? That first, looking back at it now, everybody's kind of talking with that was more hockey for me, where I was really nervous, because I felt competent in my hockey skills, and that was actually more of like in lacrosse, I never was supposed to be like a good player. Like, I came from a school that didn't have it. Guy had no idea what he was teaching us. It was basically the hockey team, had a bunch of buddies, and we had like 3 kids on our team that actually knew, and the one, he did a summer camp up in Carthage, New York. So he just happened to, his grandparents lived where the Powells lived. So he was like our only information about lacrosse. Like, he would come back and just tell us all this stuff, and it was so crazy. But yeah, that is
my dad played in high school, didn't play in college. And I think he was probably like one of like 2 or 3 dads who had ever picked up a lacrosse stick before when it came to kids on my high school team. So the vast majority of these guys had no contact with the sport other than like maybe playing youth lacrosse. And some of the best players on my high school team didn't play youth lacrosse. Like the kid who ended up like going off to Hofstra and, you know, starting as a senior at Hofstra, like he was just a really good athlete. You know, he got recruited to play like, you know, low level D1 football and, you know, to be a wrestler, but he started playing lacrosse as a sophomore in high school. He was a really good athlete. He was really competitive in anything that he was doing. And so like he was great. But we didn't, you know, there wasn't a ton of that, like, oh, they come from a lacrosse family. Like those kids all ended up going off to private school. So the kids who stayed in public school, like for the most part, had some experience playing youth lacrosse. Like I had probably played more lacrosse than most of the guys in my high school team.
Yeah, it is such a crazy thing though, because you could take an athlete, but if they don't put the work in at home to learn how to really throw and catch or play with the ball, I mean, they're just kind of out there running around. So that's a huge credit to that kid, because I mean that's not something you just pick up
Yep.
a stick and all of a sudden you can throw. But yeah, that is such
No, but
a
I mean, he was at home throwing a ball off his chimney.
yeah.
You know, like literally. I mean, like, and that's part of why he got really good is that he put the work in. You know, like he took his natural athletic ability, his competitiveness, and then he built up his skill set. And then everything that he had, you know, he was a great basketball player as a kid growing up. He was a great soccer player, even though he played high school football. Like he used to come out and play like on our soccer team sometimes over the summer, like our little town rec summer, you know, high school team. And he'd come out and you're like, man, he'd be like, you'd start on our varsity high school. Like, you know, so again, he was just a really good athlete. And that's something too that I think people miss out on is that they're thinking like, oh, if I play lacrosse year round, it's going to get me to a better school, a better college. Maybe that's how I'm going to play D1. It's like, if you're not a D1 athlete, probably not. Like it's probably not going to work out for you. You're probably going to play D3 or you're going to play club or, you know, like in the MCLA or the NCLL or JUCO or, you know, whatever it is. Like if you're not a top level stud athlete in all your sports, you're probably not going to be a top level stud athlete in just one sport. And right. So like those things translate. There's a ton, you know, if you understand the concept of a read and react triangle offense in basketball, you're going to be able to step out on a lacrosse field once you have the stick skills and see success there because it's the same stuff. Can you be deceptive? You know, do you have a quick first step? Can you utilize those two things in concert to beat somebody one-on-one? Once you do that, can you make the pass? Can you find the open guy? Do you understand where they're going to come from? If you can, then you can. If you can't, then you probably can't, right? It's like the same kids who struggle on the basketball court or in the hockey rink or on the soccer field are the same kids who struggle on the lacrosse field. And it's not because they're not necessarily like putting in the time. Sometimes it's just because they're, you know, they haven't learned that lesson. They haven't learned how to be deceptive. That, you know, like I often relied on my athleticism more than my deception. And I think if I had focused more, and that was true in every sport that I played. Right?
It is funny you watch the kids.
I was like, I'm just going to kick the ball around this guy and then run around him. And sometimes it worked out because I was faster than him. A lot of times it didn't because I wasn't very deceptive. That was the same thing in lacrosse. Like as a high school player, I was just like, I'm just going to run around this guy. You know, and it's like, well, if he's as fast and strong as I am, well, I don't have much of an advantage here. So, yeah, it's amazing to see how much all these different sports translate and transfer to one another.
Speaking of, when was the first time you saw and or played box lacrosse? Because that to me, like I played in college in Utica and still had never even heard of it. Even though we had the Albany Attack, like I roughly knew what it was, but I never made it down to Albany back then. So the Firewolves was the first time when they came to Albany that I actually saw I was like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah, so the first time I ever saw a game of box lacrosse was in the old Boston Garden. I went in with my dad and my brother, and we went and we watched a Boston Blazers game back when they were wearing like orange, green, and white and black. All the guys were in Yofa helmets and spandex shorts, and they had these like super pinched sticks with traditional pockets, and goalies were wearing huge gear, and you know they're throwing behind the back passes, and catching everything and cross-checking each other and fighting each other, and the goalies are padded up. And I was like, I had only ever seen field lacrosse, and I was like, what is this? Like, what is this? This is bizarre. Like, this is, did somebody just make this up? And yes, in the 1930s, people did just make it up. Like, they just took lacrosse and put it in the hockey rink. But I was immediately hooked to that game, and so I watched it, for all of those years, kind of through middle school and high school. And, whenever we could get out to a game, you'd watch it. If it happened to be on TV, which is rare, you'd watch it. When I was in college, like I definitely paid attention to, I think it was Major Indoor League Lacrosse back then, but maybe it was the NLL. I can't remember when that switch happened, but yeah, I mean, you kind of watch it and pay attention. But I didn't play my first game of box until I was like 32 years old.
So that's awesome. You did after college? Did you keep playing like club league and
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah, I played in the American Lacrosse League for Connecticut Valley and Comlax out of Boston for a couple of years. I'd always like playing the Glastonbury tournament, and then eventually moved to New York and played in the ULAX League and played in it was like the Gotham Elite League or something like that up at Columbia over the summer, where like all these investment banks were sponsoring teams, basically of guys who worked at the investment banks. And so you ran out of a bunch of guys I'd played against at Middlebury and some of my Wesleyan teammates, and we linked up with a crew of guys from Hobart and got a team that was sponsored by a brewery out Long Island, and so just kept playing the game because it was fun. That was really it.
So yeah, you just kind of, and that's one thing is we had men's league hockey. Now we're starting to get one. Saratoga's got one, Albany, but Mohawk League out of Schenectady there, I guess, is the longest running league. So I mean, you ended up in an area you didn't have to like build up an adult program anywhere. You were able to actually kind of just play with some guys and jump in, or
Yeah, one of the ULAX founders lived in New York City, so this was like one of the first places that they started a league. And there's so many college graduates, guys who played club or D3 or D1 who moved to the city for work. There is that base of players, and so yeah, there was kind of like right as I moved in, pretty soon after that, a league started up. A bunch of guys that I played with at Wesleyan were here in the city, so we all got together and we were like, hey, we know and like each other. We love playing lacrosse. Like, why not get a team in this ULAX league? And so that's great. I think ULAX is such a phenomenal organization, and that they've been able to set up men's leagues in all of these places and provide structure where it didn't exist beforehand. Right? It's a lot of effort to put together a men's league.
yeah, GMs and
So,
people that organize it, nobody ever gives them enough credit, and everybody always likes to run their mouth. But without the guys doing all that, lining up the paperwork, field time, all that stuff that nobody
it's a
thinks
lot.
about.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's not just rolling the ball out and getting a men's league going. Like it requires a lot of setup and insurance and making sure that you've got the right number of teams and good referees, and what are the rules that you're going to play with, who's going to get the field permits. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. Just like running a youth lacrosse organization, but these are thankless jobs, unfortunately. And so it's kind of like the way we treat referees, I think is just an abomination these days. I mean, yelling at these guys who literally don't care. They don't care. They care about reffing, but they don't care if you win or lose. They have nothing invested in who wins a game, and yet people are like, "Oh, you're trying to steal the game from us." It's like, this is a meaningless men's league game or a youth game. Are you really yelling at these guys? And so yeah, so I mean, I think the refs deserve a lot more love from the community, but so do the people who run youth lacrosse organizations and leagues. And without those guys, it's just it's not happening. So
Yeah, we got to work with ULAX.
playing.
This was our first time. I'd been out of lacrosse basically from college, so I stopped going. What was it, '04? So from '04 until my kids were old enough, my son played a little bit, didn't like it, so he stopped. I got back out of it again, and then I got hurt and started. That's when the Firewolves came in my hip, and this all kind of just snowballed into that. So 32 though, where did you were still playing field? Where was box? Did you have to travel, or was it down by where you were living?
I was not going to do what some of the other guys that I knew were doing, which is like driving down to Baltimore to play in the Bill. the Baltimore Indoor Lacrosse League. Like that was not. I was not driving down at like 9 p.m. on a Thursday and then getting back at like 4 o'clock in the morning and then going to work. Like that seemed crazy to me. So I actually partnered with the ULAX Field Lacrosse League, and so their first ever box league was in New York City. And so we started that up in like 2011, maybe 2012, something like that. Maybe it was a little earlier. I can't remember. But we found a roller hockey rink in the city, and we bought box goals. And one of my buddies from Canada that I'd met playing in a field lacrosse tournament down in New Orleans, of all places, he was like, "Hey, I got 2 extra sets of Bodum leg guards." And so he mailed those down to me, and so those became property of the league. I think they still actually use them. It's like 13 years later, they're screwed together and taped together. But for the guys who don't have pads, because not every goalie does, bought a couple 4x4 rage cages, and the guys would show up in a minivan and bring out the balls and the cages and the goalie pads, and so we got this again, like very few of the people who were playing in that league were box guys, but there was nothing to do over the winter. There was no ULAX Winter League, and so we started up a Winter Box Lacrosse League, and that's actually still going on today.
Oh, that's awesome. At the same facility, or?
No, the roller hockey guys eventually kicked us out of the Upper East Side rink that was there, which was an awesome rink, and now they play out in it, which is they play at a very nice rink now out in Queens. I wouldn't say it's very nice, but it does the job.
So, I mean, is that something down there? I would imagine most of their places have ice. How many facilities down by the city is there? Is it like soccer that you guys can kind of play on? Is there box facilities, or I mean, how does that work?
For field lacrosse, yeah, there are plenty of Parks Department turf fields, and once you get a permit, like 1 year, you just kind of roll that permit on to the next year. So that's how ULAX does that. And then there are multiple roller hockey rinks in New York City. There used to be a lot more. It used to be like a very popular thing in the city was playing roller and street hockey. So there are all of these facilities, but like the one that we use out in Queens, I've never seen people playing roller hockey out there or street hockey ever. And so I don't know that anybody uses it other than us really consistently, or that they get a permit for it. But yeah, so there are those kind of they're all outside, and it's like, oh, it's snowing, or it's really icy and slippery this week. Or, I mean, there's a funny video that I put up. It's like I used old Benny Hill music where they kind of like speed up the action because it was like just the slipperiest day, and we were just like, yeah, I guess we'll try and play. And I mean, it just turned into a total disaster, but it was fun. It's like, again, people just get out there and you're throwing around, you're shooting. Better to play lacrosse or hockey or whatever it is than not, right?
Yeah, no, keep out there, keep moving. A lot of people after high school and college athletics is over, they just kind of give up playing. Baseball seemed to be like the only thing by us that had a consistent. It's that like men's softball league, and we had some hockey leagues, but a lot of the problems with those, they'd start to get too competitive. Like the longer established they are, and then the pickup leagues would kind of disappear, and that was always a pain. So you guys went down there, and then essentially you've always just played lacrosse everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I can. I've used it like as a tool to kind of travel around the world. And not that people are paying me to play, but like if I'm going on vacation somewhere, the idea of just like going to a hotel and being a tourist and doing all the tourist stuff like really isn't that attractive to me personally. Some people like it, and more power to them. But if I can connect with somebody from the local community through a sport that we both love, I always think that gives me the kind of experience that I want to have. So I've gone over and played in the Les Memorial in Radotín in the Czech Republic, just outside of Prague. I've done that 6 times, and yes, I've been walked across a 1,000-year-old bridge, and I've seen the astrological clock and the castle, and I've done all over the 6 times that I've been over there. I've done all of these things. That is not why I go over there. Why I go over there is because there are amazing people to meet, and you feel like you're playing box lacrosse in front of 2,000 people in a 10,000 person town outside, in a beautiful facility, because they really care about it in Radotín. but you know, you're meeting these people, and I'm still friends with these people. So like when the Czech guys were over for the World Box Cross Championships in Utica this past year, like it's not like I'm meeting those guys for the first time. The younger guys, like I've seen those kids play in the youth demo game, you know, in 2012, like, and now they're 13 years older and they're playing for their national team. Like it's cool to see those kids progress. You know, and then a couple other guys who are a little bit older, like I've been playing against those guys for 13 years. Like, what a cool experience. You know, I know their coach because I played against them my first year, and you know, we've been kind of friends ever since then. Like that to me is the strength of continuing to play sports at much lower than the professional level.
That's the best part of
the
all these
connections.
trips, though. You see people, like, you really look forward to it. Like, your favorite part, at least for us, of LAXNAi is not going out there and getting to watch some of the most incredible lacrosse, which we do get to do, but it's really getting to see the people that we only see, you know, 2-3 times a year at these events. And that really, the connections you make through this sport is really something special, because nobody's really in it for the, you know, the money. Everybody's paying to get out
I hope
there,
not.
and it's
Yeah.
just like this different level of craziness that people, when you try to explain it to people who aren't into it, they're like, wait, what? Why are you
Yeah.
doing this? And it's like, I don't know, we just do. It's fun. It's what we do.
I mean, you know, so I've started playing. I stopped playing ice hockey when I was probably like 13 years old. We didn't have a rink in my town. We didn't have a high school team, which is weird in Massachusetts, but it is what it is. So I started playing again last year, and you know, playing down at Chelsea Piers or playing at this public covered outdoor rink in Harlem. Like you're seeing these same people week after week, and you're making friends. You're getting exercise. You are competing at an appropriate level for yourself. So like down at Chelsea Piers in New York, I mean, there are 8 divisions, and some of the divisions are broken up into A and B. And so like I play on a bunch of teams down there for ice hockey, and you know, like you're able to find the appropriate level, right? So if you're all the way at the bottom at like 8B, you got a lot of people out there maybe started playing hockey like 2 or 3 years ago as an adult. It's not high level hockey by any stretch of the imagination, but it sure is fun and it's competitive. And then once you played a season or two there, or 3 seasons, and you start to feel comfortable, maybe you move up to 8A or to Division 7, or you know, eventually work your way up into 6 or 5. And so it's kind of like, you know, you look out at a Division 1 game down at Chelsea Piers, and everybody played in high school or juniors, or they played, you know, in Division 1 school or D3 or college club. You know, they just play a lot. Everybody's pretty good. You know, the game's pretty fast. Everybody can skate. And, you know, you get great edge work, and you know, do all the fancy stuff. And then as you move down the divisions, you know, the level of play kind of drops off, as it should. But it means that, you know, somebody like me who hadn't played hockey in 30 years can, you know, go out there and find a team, and you know, I've started to move up and play in some higher divisions as well again, and that's like that, I think, is something that lacrosse is missing, to a certain extent. Like most of the tournaments you go to are elite only. You know, there's an open division, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, masters or having a B division can really be an attractive option. Kind of like how we set up LAXNAi. Like there are gold divisions and silver, and everybody in gold and silver is technically competing for the same championship. But the gold division play is better than the silver division. Now, if you're the best team in your silver group, you get to go up, you qualify into the playoffs, and you start playing against gold division teams. So if you put together a really good team, you win your silver division, you know, your little silver group of 3 or 4 teams, then you get to move on and you move into the playoffs. But to me, like the LAXNAi is great because you've got a lot of teams out there who are stacked with guys who are relatively new to box lacrosse. How else do you get the opportunity to learn and play if you don't get to play? And so that's like a big part of like how we run that tournament and why we structure it the way that we do.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's cool too, especially the youth. So you've got guys out there walking with all these pro NLL players. I know So like my nephew's big into lacrosse. He goes with us a lot for these things, and he like for him to get to be on the same field as Dougie Jameson's coming off the field as he's walking on, or he's walking by Cody Jameson, or like any one of these like top level guys. That is probably the best thing. I love LAXNAi. We look forward to it every year. A little bit more time in between a couple games would be all right, but other than that, it's hands down our favorite. Like we love it. So when did it started out not as LAXNAi though?
Originally started out at LASNAi. So like I was, and that was LAS. So originally like I was a co-founder for LaxAllstars.com. And they were kind of like, the presenting sponsor of the tournament, if you will. We started that in 2016 in Onondaga after the World Box Lacrosse Championships, which had been held there in 2015. And kind of looked around and was like, I'd been to the Prague tournament already and said, like, there's nothing like that in North America, which is crazy, where you're playing these short games and all these teams who would never play each other over their summer seasons are able to come out and play against each other. And so that was really like the impetus for starting that. COVID kind of like got us out of the nation just because, they were very cautious. And rightly so.
Shut right down. Onondaga wasn't letting anybody in. Yeah, they were not interested in it at all.
Yeah, and so that kind of forced our hand. And so, the next year when they were still shut down, we were looking to run the tournament again. People wanted to play. And so we found the spot in Utica, which is just a fantastic facility. I mean, a world-class facility. And then that's also, what brought the World Box Lacrosse Championships there as well.
Yeah, no, that's and that was my first experience getting to meet like the organization or really. So, I mean, honestly, that was our first year ever doing anything like this. We had just jumped into filming. My 15-year-old son at the time was the one who taught us how to do it. We had his stuff. We had nothing but like music, microphones, and that was quite the year for us to. And essentially, after we ended up at LAXNAi, it gave us all this credibility that people started calling us because this is not what we do full time. So like this was just all. Everybody started calling, and we just kind of were like, well, we don't really have all the stuff. Like LAXNAi rented us a camera for it, and they were like, oh. Okay, so then they were like, all right, well, if you come to this many games, we'll buy a camera. And we just kind of started doing that, and it kind of blossomed from there. It's been, for me, it couldn't have worked
funny, even like right the parallel there to sports, right? Like the first time you go out and you play lacrosse, you are probably going to be pretty terrible and have no idea what you're doing, and you're going to rely on somebody else to kind of teach you and show you. But if you do it and you give it your best effort and you learn as much as you can, the next time you come out, you're going to do a better job. You're going to have more fun, right? And that just keeps progressing on to that next step. And that's what I was talking about earlier about, learning these life lessons, right? Like if you hadn't played sports, would, as a kid growing up and learn those life lessons, would you have had the courage to go out and stream a game and do something that you've never done before? Probably not. And if you had done that, you had mustered the courage and it hadn't been perfect, would you have given up?
Oh yeah.
Chances are higher that you would have. So
I see it a lot with my.
Really do translate.
No, they do. So I see it a lot with my kids because they were not really into sports. So we've done like other things with them as more their goal. But actually doing the blue squatch and just like teaching them, you're gonna get humbled in life. Like it just happens. You're gonna embarrass yourself in front of a bunch of people. You're gonna make mistakes, and that's kind of how it goes. And it's like even talking, like to realize most people really put a lot into talking to people online where it's going to go. And some of us just don't think about it. And I guess sports would have to be the answer to where I learned it. I got lucky as a kid. I had Barry Melrose coach me. And like the life lessons you learn from that guy, like you said, he's like, this game doesn't matter. He's like, not at all. What matters is how you feel about how you played this game. You're the only one who knows if you went out there and did what you were supposed to do and tried as hard as you could. He's like, and you know what work you put into it ahead of time. He's like, games are just fun. Your hard work's done already. And I try to lay that to my kids all the time. Like, yeah, when you get there for the first one, you're going to learn some stuff, but it's not a place to improve your skills. You're just kind of there to get humbled and be like, oh, I need to pay a lot more attention to this.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's kind of like a reality check, right? And there are other opportunities in life to do things like that, as you're growing up. But I think, being part of like the theater group, right? Like you're rehearsing and learning your lines. And the first time you're in a play, maybe you're not that great, you know, as a freshman or whatever. Maybe you're doing the lights,
Yeah.
or you're backstage and you're kind of learning the way things go. And then as a sophomore, maybe you get like a smaller role. And by the time you're a senior, you're the lead. But you kind of build up to it, right? And again, like that's another consequence-free environment. Like, hey, your parents are going to love it. Don't worry about that. But like, you might not win an award, right, for your high school play, but you're getting better.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing. All of these extracurricular activities, it's really about like self-fulfillment and pushing yourself and learning how to improve, but doing so in somewhere where you're not getting a grade for it. And then there's really, if you're successful, quote unquote, or not, there's really no consequence for it either,
Yeah, no,
which I
that's
think is great.
no, it is perfect. And actually, so my son doing that, the sound people that came in for the to that were working with the play, I learned more from them because I went and recorded the play and put it online for them. And so those sound people taught me more in 8 hours than I had learned in 2 years of doing this. Like the
Yeah.
professional level, there's nothing like experience. I mean, now I'm sure you pick up a stick, it's second nature. You could, within two throws, you're going to know exactly where that stick's throwing, how the ball's going to go, and you can kind of put the ball in the general area. You build these muscle memory things that people don't realize. And it really does translate into life. Like if you know you need to get up and do something, you're either somebody who knows he needs to get up and do something, or you're somebody who can sit there all day and do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think the idea of like doing it, knowing that that's going to potentially pay off in the future, is a very important thing to learn for sure.
So we got lucky with that. How did you get hooked up with the World's People? Was this just something you from LAXNAi? You guys, because World Box has only been around for what, since 2015?
2003, I think, was the first year that World Lacrosse ran a box championships. Um, they've done it in like Nova Scotia, Prague, I believe somewhere in Ontario. 2019 was Langley.
They're actually all in the back of my hoodie. I did wear this hoodie for you because I knew how much, when I didn't have it at the Worlds. But no, what a cool experience that was.
Really small. They were always really small events. Very few countries were coming out and playing box lacrosse. So I think you had the U.S., you had Canada, you had Haudenosaunee, you had the Czech Republic, and then countries kind of came in and out and kind of got involved slowly. But in 2015, I think that was really like probably the first year where you kind of had like a big bump in terms of attendance and countries playing. And then 2019 in Langley you had a good chunk of countries. And then obviously like the 2024 in Utica was huge on the men's side with 28 teams. And then on the women's side, for their first World Championships to have 10 teams was really impressive. That's way more teams than were originally playing in 2003. It's not even close for on the men's side. So they've really, the women's box lacrosse stuff has really taken off and been an impressive start. And I'm excited to see where that goes. But yeah, 2014, I went out to Denver to the field with lacrosse championships. I was involved with Lax All Stars, obviously from a media side. And then I was also the general manager for one of the national teams. 2015, I was in Onondaga doing, all media side stuff. But then, I've been to Prague, 3 times at that point. So I'd kind of seen how that tournament ran. And I wasn't one of those guys who got to Prague and was like, I'm going to go out all night and then sleep until an hour before my game and then make it to the rink. It's like, first game's tomorrow at 8 a.m. It's Oslo versus, Pardubice. I'm there. And so I was just like, I saw how the event ran and knew that we could run that between myself and Scott Neese, knew that we could run that in the U.S. Or, in a Six Nations capacity, and just kind of threw it out there and did it. Year one, we had 12 teams. But, it was kind of buoyed by the fact that, like Dane Smith and Lyle Thompson and, like all these big name guys, Kyle Buchanan, they're all playing in the tournament. And so it kind of just like went from there.
Yeah, that's that tournament still blows my mind. Like the talent from the top to the bottom of that tournament is insane, and you end up like seeing some of these guys that you've never heard of, but then you watch them playing against some of the top talent, and you're like, wow, this is absolutely insane. Like there's so many guys that you don't know. It really shows you like the difference between your top 15 guys in the world is not as big as your 15 to 100. And like at that LAXNAi tournament, you've got a lot of that 15 to 100 there that are just like you really see there's not much difference. Sometimes it's the look, sometimes you were just seen at the right place at the right time. It's insane the amount of talent. I mean, so from your perspective, getting to watch it then, I mean, how cool is it to see like these loaded teams just showing up because knowing you started with what, 12 teams?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, even when we started with 12, like Thompson Brothers Lacrosse, they won the first three LAXNAi titles. Um, but again, like you got Lyle and his brothers, and his dad was actually on as well, and Dane Smith, all on the same team, right? Right, like that's a team that's like they're competing for an NLL championship, right? Like they're very good, and that's one of the cool things about lacrosse is that you get to step out on the field with these guys who are playing at the top of their game. Like even when I go out and play with the Wesleyan alumni team at Lake Placid in the 35 plus division, like we played the Hopkins alumni team, and it's like half Hopkins guys and then like a bunch of their friends. There are a lot of USA helmets out there. There are guys who played in like the 2018 World Championship team. Like and you're playing against them, and so that's one of the cool things about a smaller sport is that you do get to play against and with like some of these top players in the world. The gap between myself and Lyle Thompson is pretty big, but not necessarily so big that I can't step out on a field and sure we might lose by 15 goals or whatever, but like that we can't play the same game.
It's so yeah, that's so cool. I got to play against Sidney Crosby as a kid, and like
That's awesome.
yeah. So like when you think about now like what some of these guys have done, and yeah, that is cool. I love how LAXNAi does that. To backtrack a little bit, how did you start Lacrosse All Stars though? Because that was my introduction to you. Like I said, there's literally hundreds of kids who got to throw and catch because I would sit here at night because like I knew how to play, but I always had somebody who strung my sticks for me. So then when I started coaching kids, I coached like first and second graders. I don't like competitive lacrosse at all, really, when it comes to coaching. I'd rather just fun, teach them to throw and catch. But watching your videos and doing it, what made you decide, you know what, I'm going to start? Because it was such a resource for so many people to learn that. Like, how'd you start doing it?
That's a great question. I just I don't even know. I actually just like I was kind of bored, I guess you could say, with
That's how
like my
Blue Squad
job
started.
in New York City. Like I was doing economic development work for the city, and it was fine, but I wasn't like passionate about it, to the point that like I couldn't get enough. And any of my extra time, I was going to go to some conference and learn about, a new industrial development agency bond. Like I was like, yeah, I mean, it's a job. Like I'm going to do it. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to, be competent at what I'm doing and successful. But it wasn't something that, I was thinking about on weekends. And so I just started writing like on a WordPress site that I set up. And Lax Ulsters actually kind of existed before I joined up, and it was a bunch of like MCLA guys who had played out at Oregon, and they were kind of like in the tech industry, and just had like it was kind of like a side project for them, and they were looking for a writer and somebody who knew like the East Coast side of lacrosse because they were Idaho guys and Oregon guys. And I'd coached in college at Wesleyan after I graduated, and grew up out here, and knew a lot of guys who played D1, and I've been to a bunch of Final Fours. Like I just had that kind of like experience and wanted to write about it, but I never thought it would turn into anything. And so I got linked up with them, and kind of grew the site from there. That was probably 2009, 10, something like that. And yeah, it just kind of like took over, more and more of my time. And eventually like I was able to quit my job and go full time with that.
So you were originally writing and then just started making videos as something as you were trying to do more with it, or what was it?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. The videos kind of just, that's where things were trending a little bit. I didn't love being trying to be like a lacrosse personality, where I'm out like, you know, rating helmets or, like
Yeah.
kind of meaningless stuff, or just, like I hate sports radio. It's just like,
Yep.
are we really like tearing down people and just like saying outrageous things in the sports? I get that people enjoyed doing that. I just don't find it to be that productive. And I've always viewed lacrosse as like, this is a gift I received. I can't give it back to the people who gave it to me because they've already got it. So I can give it to like the next generation of people or somebody who doesn't know. And, I didn't string sticks in high school, but I nobody did really in college either. So I kind of learned because I had to. And then, I'd say by my sophomore, junior in college, like I was stringing 50 to 75% of the sticks for guys on my team. And so that was something that I felt like I could really give back. It was like mine, because I remember learning how to string sticks was such a challenge. Like trying to follow a black and white photocopied Brian manual. It was just like, what? Like what kind of knot is that? Like that makes no sense. And so a lot of people at the time were putting out these, like 10-minute long stringing tutorial videos that were, like a lot of like jump cuts and fancy music and flash transitions. And so my approach was totally different. I would take a camera and focus it on myself and let it run for like an hour as I waxed poetic about stringing sticks and like showing you how to do like every knot on the sidewall, even though they're all the same knot. But the more times you see it and the more times somebody talks to you about it, the higher your chances are that you're going to actually learn how to do it.
Well,
and so
plus for
my
me,
approach
like
wasn't pretty.
Yeah, well, no, you could line it up though, so it was cool because like a lot of those flash cuts and jump ones you're talking about that are fast, they'll show you like, okay, you do this knot, now you do this knot all the way down, and this is what it looks like at the end. Whereas you were like, okay, when I'm here, I look, I make sure I'm at the same, here, same,
Right.
like the little things. Yeah, the older I get, the more I realize long form content is usually so much better. The nuance that it's like if you don't have the attention span for it, then just don't watch the video. You're not that into it.
I mean, and the short stuff, trust me, it looked a lot better than what I was doing. No question about it. Like no question about it. But I don't think you can teach somebody how to string a pita pocket in 10 minutes.
No.
I think it's too much information to take in. And so my pita pocket tutorial, which is like 100,000 plus views on YouTube, which is crazy, crazy to me that people watch that many times. But it's an hour plus of just me talking about everything. And I don't even cover everything, right? I don't cover close to everything in an hour long video showing you how to do something. And so, yeah, that was kind of the impetus behind that, was not like make it visually attractive, but make it informative. And I've had people come up to me who are like, I must have watched that pita pocket tutorial video like 200 times. And you're just like, really? And they're like, yeah, I know how to string that pocket because of that video. And that to me is like one of the most rewarding things. Like it doesn't have to be pretty to be informative, and it's not going to go viral because it's so cool. It's going to get a lot of views over a long time because there's a lot of information there, and the people who really want to learn how to do it are going to be able to do it.
Yeah, no, that's a huge resource. It's when we started doing this, it originally was actually something I was doing with my son, just wanted to try to learn a little more and do it. And as we were doing it, we kind of really saw how much it meant to like everybody playing. Like the guys that were playing, and we were making these highlights, and I do these podcasts, and the one guy afterwards, he said to me, he goes, "You don't realize it yet." He goes, "But," he goes, "my grandkids will be able to watch this someday." I was like,
yeah.
Okay, that's cool. He's like, yeah, he goes, "That's not a big deal to you yet." He goes, "Trust me, that'll sink in someday." And as my kids get older, and I was like, oh, you know what, you're right. It unfortunately, we just went to that, I had to go to that wake out in Binghamton. That guy did not, I tried to get JR Gaudette to do a podcast with me. He said, no, I'm too boring. So my new rule is once I ask somebody, I'm not giving up. I'm like, nope, you're going to do it. And I will hold up all the rest of them on Blue Squatch until you do it. So that is my newest thing for the most part.
And doing something too like this, that long form, like is it a quick hitter and somebody's going to scroll through it in the reel? No. But like if it influences one person, if one person gets into coaching and has the right mentality about serving the vast majority of kids as opposed to just the elite, well, then this video was worth it, right? If that positively influences one life or 10 or 100 or 1,000, like, isn't that worth it? Isn't that part of our responsibility as human beings, is to try to share and give back? And so that was always the idea behind the string videos, and interviews that I did as well, was like, let's try to talk about stuff in a meaningful way, and share some really meaningful information, as opposed to just flashy short stuff, which I understand has a huge market, right?
Yeah.
People want that. They got 2 minutes to kill. They'll pull the phone up and watch something, and that's great. It serves a market. It wasn't really the market that I was that interested in personally. To each their own, but my stuff was more like, if I can share something meaningful that allows somebody like yourself to learn how to string sticks and give kids a better experience playing the game because their stick is strung better, well, that's a big win, for me as a human being.
Yeah. No, when you I had gotten to meet you, and you had said that the one time when I said, I was like, hundreds of kids got to learn how to throw basically because of you, and you're like, that's huge. And I really think about that. So that's why, like, I've got Skylar's stringing video on my stick too. He's our local guy. I don't know if you know Penny Strings at all, Skylar
Yeah.
Saunders. But yeah, so he actually just moved into our town. I just happened to
Oh,
meet
nice.
him because my nephew plays lacrosse in the town. So he was coaching. He goes, hey, somebody started the rec league. And I was like, what? He goes, for kids. He's like, come on. He's got all the high school kids down there coaching. So I showed up, introduced myself to Skylar, and started, bring down a bunch of sticks. But it is funny how it's so small, but really it just takes a couple guys that are willing to, kind of put themselves out there and do things. And then all of a sudden, now we've got a girls team, a boys team, a varsity, and JV, hopefully a modified team in the next coming year. It all starts with youth programs with these teams. And honestly, it's just so hard to get people to understand that it's probably not you, kid. It's probably that stick if it's thrown straight into the ground. I wonder how many people have never tried it again because they're just like, I can't do this.
No, I mean, I think that that's a great point. And very few sports are like that. Like, you don't put on, like a soccer boot and you kick a ball and it just like goes off the other way. And you're like, oh, it's because my shoe is wrong, right? It's like they just think that like they can buy a stick from a store and it's going to work and it's going to be fine. And it's like, that's not really the case. Especially like as you're a youth player, like there's a pretty specific style of pocket you want most kids to start out with. No whip, mid to low pocket so that they can cradle vertically and horizontally. You don't want like one of these like big bag high pockets for a beginner. They're going to really struggle with the mechanics. They're going to struggle, and you can get there where your game develops and you're like, oh, I play mostly sidearm and I cradle horizontally. Like, you can get there, but it's like, it's not true with a hockey stick. Like, you go out with a hockey stick and you're like, yeah, it's got a little curve to it and it's a stick and you hit the puck with it. And people are like, got it. Makes sense. Whereas with lacrosse, like, there's no piece of equipment in the entire sports world that even comes close to how customized and different and bad a lacrosse stick can be, right? And so if you're starting out with one of those sticks, like I coach youth clinics here in New York City now, and I would say like half the kids that come in, like, I almost can't throw with their sticks. And I've been playing this game for like 30 plus years. If I can't do it and you're brand new, you definitely can't do it. And so a coach is like, yeah, just throw the other kid the ball. And I'm like, well, it's not that easy because the ball won't come out of his stick, or he needs to be able to bench press 300 pounds to throw with this like super whippy stick. And that kid is, chicken arms. So it's like, he's no good. Like, it's not going to work out. He's going to have a terrible experience and going to hate lacrosse because it's too hard. And so, I think having like a half ball depth pocket starting out, for like a K to third grade player is really important. Like, not having any whip is really important. And if you give a kid a stick that doesn't have like a ton of channeling, or it doesn't have a lot of hold, whatever. I mean, hold is a skill, but we'll get past that. Like you look at Lyle Thompson's stick, there's not a lot of channel there. There's not a lot of whip there. Like he can push the ball right out, but he's got the best hold in the world. It's a skill issue, and so that's the thing is that people want like a miracle stick to fix all of their problems, and the ball will never come out. It's like, yeah, it's going to hinder you for the important part of the game, which is scooping, passing, shooting, catching, playing team lacrosse, getting it in and out quickly, being able to make a decision and do that, as opposed to like pull your hands all the way back. Like you should just be able to push it from here. Well, a lot of people can't do that because their sticks aren't strung to accommodate that style of play. So having a stick that works, not just works for you, but that works in general, especially when you're starting out, is incredibly important. All the sticks that I grew up playing with were all tennis rackets.
Yeah.
I mean, just factory strong. We had no idea what we were doing. And the only way to get a stick to not whip was like, well, you're going to pull the leathers in nice and tight, and it's going to be like a third of a ball deep. But you do develop a better set of stick skills. And then when you get that stick with a relatively, 3/4 full ball depth pocket that doesn't have whip in it, you're able to do amazing things with it. Just amazing things. But starting out with a stick with a really small pocket that throws true is huge.
I don't even put shooting strings. Yeah, I don't put shooting strings in most of the kids' sticks when I put them in.
Most of them don't need it at that age. Yeah.
And that's the best compliment I ever had was I handed this college kid my stick once, and he goes, "This is a perfect kid stick." And I was like, "Why? Thank you. That's what I strive for." Nice and down, and just
no, that's what you want.
Yeah. No, I do love it. Is funny though, because, and I've got a pile of sticks actually sitting on my wall right now, and it's funny because for most people they would just look at them and be like, "Oh, everyone's a lacrosse stick," and I literally have different pockets of practicing stringing. Like, okay, I wanted this pocket to be here, and try a super tight channel or no channel at all on this one, and I've got a whole collection of them.
Yeah, and once you develop, your skill set and your game, and you put the hours in, right, where like that stick is an extension of your body, you can start to look at having a different style of pocket for sure. A lot of people do that, right? And everybody's got their personal favorites and how they want things set up. But I think starting off like that is one of the big things that pushes kids away from the sport is that they have a stick that they just cannot confidently catch and throw with.
Yeah, no, it is it's so weird. And even with hockey, like you said, you give a kid a stick and it's what is it, a dime you can't put under the stick. So I mean, there's really not that much of a difference. It really doesn't matter.
I mean, the difference between like a P92 and a P28 blade, like a blade 1 and blade 6, like it's not huge. If you can play with one, you can probably play with the other. When you get to an elite level, okay, it becomes a different issue, and people have their little tendencies because they're doing things slightly different. But when you're just basically slapping at the puck, or trying to wrist it off, the toe, like it's not a huge difference between all these things. And so lacrosse is very unique in that aspect, where not only are you dealing with an implement, just like you are in baseball or hockey, but you're dealing with a customized implement, which can be very different.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the biggest thing holding the sport's growth back, I think, in a lot of places.
You ever met that Chris from Armor Mesh?
Yeah.
He is so cool, man. Did he tell you how long it took him to sit there? Like how many times he strung and unstrung that, like to sit there and figure that traditional pocket out?
I can only imagine that it took forever, many, 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 many hours. It's a great product though. Like, it's pretty hard to string up a whippy Armor Mesh pocket. The ball comes out pretty true. You get good feel with it, right? You can feel the ball moving from side to side as you cradle. Like it's a good product. Yeah. And those kind of innovations. I mean, you think of the switch from like when I was growing up playing. You either had like super soft mesh, which was useless, or you had super hard mesh, which was also pretty useless.
Yeah.
And so like you either had to wait for your soft mesh to get like caked with dirt and really broken in, and then it was good, or you had to wait for your hard mesh to like get really soft and fraying, and then it was kind of like in the middle. So you're like trying to get to that, like it's not too hard, it's not too soft, but both of your options are at the extremes.
Yeah.
And so today, like, you put in a piece of string king or ECD into a stick and you punch it out with a baseball bat, like that stick is pretty much ready to go pretty quickly. Like it breaks in really quickly. Um, you know, it's just like it's there,
I
right?
love seeing
It's
what that
soft
kid
enough,
did
it's
too,
hard
because
enough.
like you could tell those guys just geek out over mesh. Like
Yeah.
that's their thing. That is so cool. So when did you start doing games though? Did you like teach yourself the whole production? Because I know like you guys recorded all that, or was that just something you guys like brought in people?
Similar to you, I mean, we just kind of figured it out.
Just kind of
You
plugged
know,
away.
like, and it wasn't all us. Like there were people that we had involved with it. Guy Jeff Melnick was hugely helpful in terms of figuring out a lot of that kind of stuff for the first LAXNAi when we were doing our own broadcasts. We'd get like we would literally get somebody is like painting scaffolding and like build it inside the field house in Onondaga, and just the sketchiest camera setup of all time. Like so sketchy. Climbing, getting 6'9" Steven Stamp climbing up there. You're like, is this whole thing gonna fall over? Like, are we gonna kill Stamper? And but again, you just kind of do it, right? And maybe it's not perfect, and maybe the Wi-Fi doesn't work that great because they don't have hardwired internet there. So okay,
Still, they
we're
still
also
don't.
going to record some games, right? But we're also going to record the games on an SD card in case they get cut off, and then we can upload those later. Like, and you just figure things out, right? It's the same as playing a sport. Like you just got to go out and do it, and figure that stuff out. Like I bought a used camera um, when I started doing videos and was like, all right, let's see how it goes. And, I might have to shoot things multiple times when I first started because it was terrible or I was out of frame or, like the focus was in the wrong spot. But you just you do it. And the more you do it, the better you get. And the better you get, the easier it is and the faster it is, which allows you to do it more, which allows you to improve at a faster rate. But it's just like playing sports, right? So it's the same lessons you learn. Like the first time you go out and play wall ball, you're going to drop the ball a lot. The second time, a little bit less. And as you keep going with it, you're going to get better and better. And eventually you're out there and, you're competent, and then you get to the next level. And so that's the process of it.
Yeah. So are you just full time lacrosse all the time now? Then you have been since when you started basically the full time lacrosse all stars when you kind of left that.
Yeah. Yeah. For a while, it's kind of been heavy lacrosse. Coached youth and high school and college and covered events and run events. And yeah, I mean, just, you just kind of put different sources together, and whether you're, doing some camps or you're coaching or running a youth organization. Like I ran New York City youth lacrosse group for like 3 or 4 years. And, you just figure out different ways that you can stay involved with the sport and try to cobble together an income that allows you to pay your rent and, do things from there.
Yeah. So are
In the last couple of years, like I worked at a college athletics department in Harlem, the City College of New York, and never would have gotten that job or that opportunity had it not been for lacrosse. So you find different ways to kind of do things, and it all comes together. Hopefully, if it doesn't, then you get you get a different job and you do that, and you do lacrosse stuff on the side until you can figure out a way to make it work full time. I've done plenty of that as well. So,
are you still coaching down there in the in Cooney or?
not anymore. So I did that for 5 years, and last season was my last year there. We probably had our best season in like 65 years. Qualified for the NCLL playoffs, and probably like a third of the guys in the team had played some high school lacrosse or a lot. A third had played like a year or two maybe, and then a third of our team had never picked up a stick before playing in college. So the fact that we were able to go out and beat club teams from Stony Brook and Hofstra and Iona and like to play these schools who are very established, but be able to take a team like that out there and beat them was great. But really, the important thing was giving these kids an opportunity to be leaders and be on a team. I got a bunch of pre-med guys on the team at the City College School of Medicine, and eventually that kid's going to be a doctor, and he's going to have a team of people working for him or with him or under him or whatever, but he's going to be the lead on that team. And so, trying to save somebody's life, right? Hopefully the leadership lessons and the teamwork lessons that he picked up playing college club lacrosse are going to transfer into the operating room. And it's going to allow him to be more successful at what he's doing there. And again, so that's the main point. Like, are any of the CCNY guys going to go pro? Nope. But they're going to learn really valuable lessons. And those lessons are going to help them be better in their professional lives and in their social lives and in their family lives moving forward. So, and that's really, that to me is the biggest benefit for, again, 999 out of 1,000 kids playing any sport. The benefit is the person that you become by playing that sport.
Yeah, the Eddie just lost their face-off guy. He's got to go do his residency, unfortunately. So he went through. He's been there, and all of a sudden that was really cool. His parents were standing next to us for the last game, just telling us how cool it'd been to, because they didn't have to drive out to every game. That's always my favorite. Is the parents that get to watch. We do the NAMLA stuff, and I do love doing the kids stuff. Unfortunately, you're never going to pay your rent doing kids videos. Is the problem. Otherwise, I would just do NAMLA championships forever. Like those guys, they absolutely love it. But we've been doing this for over an hour. I really appreciate you taking the time. This has been awesome.
Fun.
This has been, like I said, a true honor to get to work with you guys in LAXNAi, and I can't thank you guys enough, because without you guys, Blue Squatch would still probably just be talking to ourselves and not doing much.
No, it's great. I mean, it's always nice to meet new people and to learn new skills. And you guys have helped our event grow, not only in terms of popularity, but in terms of quality. I think that, we've been able to help you grow. And isn't that
huge? The
point of all of this, right? Like at the end of the day. So the pleasure is just as much on this side of the table.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Always fun.
Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.